Hey there, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy Site. Today is Monday, April 19th, 2021, and I'm one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson. Joining me this week is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey.
Hello, that's me.
How you doing, Trev?
I'm doing good. Busy day. It was my first day at a new job today, so just kind of like hot off the heels of that and the like that sensation of like, hey, we're gonna bombard you with a whole bunch of information, but also take it at your own pace, kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, yep. There's definitely a lot of stuff coming at me, and I was taking lots of diligent notes and stuff like that. So, but I'm ready to kind of put that all aside until tomorrow and talk about some video games.
Absolutely, that's what we're here for. In the wake of episode 50, we thought we'd again disregard most of the news and instead talk about fun stuff. Prediction time here, guys. Putting the hats back on. Dice Awards are coming up this week, in fact. I believe Thursday, I think Trevor told me earlier, and then I forgot. And so we thought, in the habit of News You Care About, that we would do a predictions episode with a Domino's pizza order on the line. It's very exciting times. We're going to go one by one through all the categories. We're going to do all the categories. I think it'll be fun, Trev, to do who we think is going to win, obviously. It's a big thing. And then also we can say who we would like to win, who we want to win in that category.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll go one by one. We can switch off each category and dive in right into the first category of the show, at least in terms of the way it's ordered on Dice's website, which is Outstanding Achievement in Animation at the 24th Dice Awards. The nominees for that include Final Fantasy VII Remake, The Last of Us Part 2, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, and Spiritfarer.
Will of the Wisps.
I always do that every time I think. I will also say, as a brief tangent before we dive into the prediction episode itself, having gone to numerous Game Awards websites over the years to do predictions episodes, Dice's is real sleek. I like how it is laid out.
Yep.
But Trevor, who do you think is going to win the Outstanding Achievement in Animation Award at the Dice Awards?
So for animation of these five, I will say that I would want Spiritfarer to win because I think it is, it's maybe the oddball out here especially in that it is hand-drawn animation is its animation style. So it might, pull an upset in that and kind of capture the Cuphead, vibes that happened a couple years ago. But also I think of these, like, Final Fantasy VII, TLO 2, and Spider-Man are all beautiful, absolutely. But I think, like, Ori is one of those, like, that's... You show off that game to show how pretty it looks and to show the animation behind it, even if it got forgotten on a lot of other kind of categories. I would say probably throughout the year, in part because of where it fell, and also just maybe because of the kind of game it was. So my prediction for this one will be Ori and the Will of the Wisps, but what Trevor wants would be Spiritfarer.
So I'm actually gonna go with your pick. I'm going to go with Spiritfarer. I think is going to win. And I think Spiritfarer is a beautiful game, and one that I am excited to dive into. It's another one that's a topic for another podcast.
All the games Logan should play on his PS5.
I'm working my way through it. But yeah, Spiritfarer is going to be my pick. I think the game is just beautiful. I mean, I think Ori is as well, but I think that game to me didn't have as much of an impact as the first one did, and I think Spiritfarer got a somewhat, nice pop last year, so I'm going to go with Spiritfarer.
For what your prediction is and what you want to win?
Sure, yeah, I guess it's what I want to win too, yeah. Okay. It's definitely what I think will win.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Moving on to art direction then?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the art. I guess we're just switching off the intros of it. So, outstanding achievement in art direction. We have this one has Ghost of Tsushima. We have Hades, which is like Hades is one that I was surprised wasn't in animation, honestly. but we have The Last of Us Part 2. We have Spider-Man Miles Morales. And once again, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. So basically, same category as the last one, swapping out Final Fantasy VII and Spiritfarer for Ghost and Hades there. So what do you think is going to take the award for art direction?
So first and foremost, I think that Ghost should win. I think that is a game that is so beautifully, I think, crafted in terms of its world and in terms of its art direction. It's also going to be the game that I think will win. I think part of this is because I think it deserves the award. I think it does what something like The Last of Us does or Miles Morales, but it does it in a more, I think, stylized way, and a more visually appealing way, at the very least for me. But also because I think that The Last of Us is going to win a lot of awards, as you will see. And I think this is one that makes sense to kind of give to Ghost if you are a voter at the DICE Awards.
I don't know. DICE is really the one that's going to throw everything for a loop, and especially like it has been like each of the different award shows we've had. We didn't really touch on a lot of the BAFTA stuff, just because of timing of other events and stuff like that. But like the Game Awards, the BAFTAs, and now potentially DICE Awards, like could all have like they all have like different pools of nominees that they're pulling from, but the Game Awards winners were very different from BAFTAs, which were very different from like your big sites like IGN or something like that. And we have to remember that DICE Award, like whoever wins Game of the Year from the DICE Awards this year is basically like the follow-up to Untitled Goose Game, which won last year. So the DICE Awards really going to potentially throw us for a loop. So with that in mind, I think Hades will take art direction here. I think it is not only like a critical darling in the industry, but I think it's also like an in-industry darling of like people looking at that game and seeing the really cool things it does. That said, so Hades is my prediction, but I would say that Ghost is so beautiful, and like there is a reason I like sat down and rebooted it up when I got my new shiny like OLED HD TV.
Yeah, I'm excited to get a new TV for that game.
Just to see like the pinks and the oranges and like the golden, the endlessly golden hour, areas in that, especially in that the early parts of that game. It is absolutely beautiful, wonderful art direction.
Yes.
I mean, it's a great sign that like the actual Tsushima like saw an uptick in like tourism interest because of the game. I know. Obviously, people couldn't actually like capitalize on it because of COVID and all that stuff. But
I would love to go eventually, though.
Yeah. So.
It is beautiful. Moving on to the next category. I don't know if these are, by the way, going to be how they're going to be presented during the show, because these seem like pretty big ones to do first. But nonetheless, we move on to.
Yeah, I don't know like how they ordered it or why they like. At first, I was like, oh, they're going alphabetically, and then it was like, no, this is clearly not alphabetical.
No, just random. But next up, we have Outstanding Achievement in Character. The nominees include Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Hades, The Last of Us Part 2 for Abby, The Last of Us Part 2 for Ellie, and then Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. Trevor, who do you think will receive the award for Outstanding Achievement in Character?
Yeah, so one of the things I really like about how DICE is doing this award is that it looks like they're celebrating not only the actor, which we often see, but also like the writers of the character, which because it is a marriage of those two elements, really. Let alone before you even get into direction and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool, and I think it's also really cool in the Ivor conversation for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, they're incorporating both the male and female versions of Ivor. So it wasn't just like it wasn't like Cassandra versus Deimos or whoever it was, Alexios, I guess, from Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So that was a cool thing. That said, it's also like Darren Core plays a whole bunch of other characters aside from just Zagreus in Hades. So. Yeah. But of this, I think we've seen a lot of kind of pull from her in a lot of the other times
Yeah.
she's been nominated throughout the year so
Yeah.
far. I think this is going to go once again to Laura Bailey for Abby in The Last of Us Part Two, and of these all, I think that would also be my pick. Who I would want to see win.
I think that every now and again at various award shows that deal with kind of performances, you just have someone who it just kind of lines up and it's like that person's going to win.
Like it was really cool. The
And
BAFTAs, they had like a lead actor and then also supporting actor, so like they kind of got to spread the wealth around. But even there, like,
yeah,
Abby won the lead. She won the lead at Game Awards and stuff. So, or Laura
I
Bailey,
think this is
rather.
Laura Bailey's year. I think. I mean, I think her performance is just such a stellar one from basically universally agreed upon. And in a similar way where it's like Daniel Day Lewis, right, and like There Will Be Blood, just was going to win everything that came before him, basically, because that performed so indelible, right? Javier Bardem and No Country for Old Men. I think this is Laura Bailey's year. I think I've foolishly predicted against her before. I will not do the same thing now. I think she will win the award. And I think this is probably one of the safer predictions we will make as well for the night.
Did you? I mean, of these, the only one you really even kind of vaguely touched was Hades. So like in the who Logan wants to win, you're just kind of like throwing Abby in there, even though you haven't actually
Yeah,
seen
absolutely.
her performance. Cool.
Yeah, I would say.
But yeah,
I trust everyone,
there you go.
basically.
All right. So moving on, we have up next, we have Outstanding Achievement in Original Music Composition. The nominees here are Carry On, Ghost of Tsushima, Little Orpheus, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and The Pathless. Some solid talent there.
I agree.
Lots of, especially in something like The Pathless and Ori.
Yep.
Like lots of, I mean, all of them really, but like those two in particular, like stand out as me as like, I like the music never like really like resonated to enough where I'm like, oh, this is like a really good track or anything like that. But it also never got in the way either. I can't speak to Little Orpheus or Carrion myself, but I think this will be one where Ghost. Not only do I want it to win, I think this is one where Ghost will come in and take it.
So I agree, and I think that the soundtrack and music of The Pathless is fantastic, right? And as someone who's never even like played the game, but just has like listened to that soundtrack pretty extensively, actually, I think it's just like great. But I think again, like in most things, it does. Ghost of Tsushima is just its music and its audio design and everything incorporated with sound. It is so brilliantly put together and realized. And in particular, I think the way that its soundtrack feeds into the larger narrative beats and moments and cues. I think it absolutely should win. I think it will win. And Ghost is an interesting game where, like, the more I think back on it, the more I'm like, that game was really good. Maybe even more than I realize at the moment. But yeah, I think that game will win this award.
Cool.
Moving on to the next award, we have, speaking of sound, Outstanding Achievement in Audio Design. And this is, I think, is going to be a really interesting one for us to have a conversation on. We have Dreams, we have Ghost of Tsushima, we have The Last of Us Part 2, we have Ori and the Will of the Wisp, and we have Sackboy: A Big Adventure. Trev, who is your prediction for this award?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one.
Yeah.
And like another one, like this is one of the rare categories where I've played all these entries, and so I actually have like a perspective on all of them. And I will say that Sackboy has some incredibly like wonderful music selections in its level design. In particular, like the levels that like pull pop culture music in, like Britney Spears' "Toxic" or something like that, are not only like adapted and handled well in like their composition, but also just incredibly fun in the level itself. But I think, and again, given that this is DICE and it's basically like industry peers voting on these things, I think this is one of those rare places we're going to see Dreams take the award, because Dreams is like such an incredible designer's kind of game in that, and especially when it comes to audio design, because you can make whatever audio design you want in Dreams. It's the whole like cliche thing of Dreams at this point. Like if you dream it, you can build it. And it's really cool that they've, like, I didn't really play around with a lot of the like level editor stuff, but like seeing the depths of creating like a music mix like tool that they put into Dreams, I think the DICE community is gonna like look at that and say that that it's like an innovation in technology kind of level award, but I think it's one of the places they can give it. So yeah, Dreams I think is my prediction, and I would say is also like because of that I think deserves it of these.
So I absolutely think Dreams is going to win. I'm glad we're on the same page. I think this is a category that will win. I think Dreams is such a weird, like one of a kind, unique, innovative experience, almost more than like a singular game. And it's such a special thing, and it's such a weird game for so many categories. And I think this is one where it can really shine. I think the ability to just create and craft in Dreams is honestly mind-blowing, and I think it absolutely should, and I think it will win the award for Outstanding Achievement in Audio Design.
Cool. So moving on, we have story. What's the
hell yeah
outstanding achievement in story? We have 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, which Cameron obviously
shout
really
to Cameron Abbott,
from our site. We have Ghost of Tsushima. We have Hades. We have Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition, and The Last of Us Part 2. So who do you think's taken outstanding achievement in story here, Logan?
I think The Last of Us Part 2 will win. I think that certainly in terms of the game that had the most discussion around its narrative and story, which is not necessarily what the award is, but I think plays a large part into it, obviously. Mm-hmm. There was so much discussion. There was so much debate. There was, a fair amount, like amount of controversy and everything around The Last of Us Part 2 that I think its story to me seems to be the one that captured kind of the zeitgeist the most in 2020. And I think, this is a certain audience that is voting for this that's different than other ones, but even other ones, I think you've kind of seen a lot just win a lot for narrative awards. But I think in this poll in particular, I think The Last of Us Part 2 will win the award.
Yeah.
And it's probably who I would agree to pick it as well.
So yeah, it's interesting. Like obviously I can't speak to 13 Sentinels, but like a lot of people really said that was like a dark horse for like best story in games last year. Like the people who played it really got connected to that story, including our own Cameron. Kentucky Route Zero is one that like I'd been hearing about for years.
Yeah.
And it's one of those that like released in episodes, I think, on PC, and like
over
TV
years,
edition is like finally it's all out. It's all in one package.
Version,
yeah, the console version. And I'd heard good enough things about it, and obviously it's an Annapurna game, so it has like a good lineage behind it supporting it. So I actually picked it up, but I have yet to like be in a place where I'm going to sit down and check this game out.
I'd love to do like a conversation on that. I think if we went through it together.
Yeah. And I thought the way Ghost in particular handles its story was really cool and interesting, in that like you can check out the side stories, but they're going to be paced out along. Like you can't just go from like beginning to end of the side stories.
Yeah.
You have to like, dole it out as the main story is kind of doled out to you as well. Last of Us, I think, is as expected, a great narrative from Naughty Dog. But I'm gonna give this one to Hades, because so much of the conversation around Hades was the fact that it made a story in a roguelike something that worked and something that was compelling and interesting, and they tied it into the roguelike nature of the game in such a great, innovative way that like the oftentimes the exciting part of the roguelike is, okay, I feel like I'm a little bit better now. I can go in and do that better. And really for me and for a lot of other people, I think the exciting part was, oh, I died, but now that just means I get to go and enjoy more story beats because I'm going to go engage with other people back at the the Hades house or whatever. So yeah, I think because of like the more innovative nature of Hades, I think that's what I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna eke that out, both
Yeah.
for my prediction and what I would love to see win it this year.
I believe it won the BAFTAs for narrative.
Yeah. That was and like yeah, the
So it
BAFTAs.
is-
I think that was one that like we had talked about if we were ever gonna do an episode on the BAFTAs. We had identified like, wait, are we reading this correctly? That like Last of Us wasn't even nominated for a best narrative at the BAFTAs.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a weird one.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so take us away with technical achievement.
Yes. So next up, we have the outstanding technical achievement. What a fantastic hodgepodge of games! I love it.
Yeah.
The dice swords are great. We have Dreams. We have Ghost of Tsushima. We have The Last of Us Part 2. We have Mario Kart Live, and we have Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Yeah. So of these, the only one I haven't really touched was Mario Kart Live.
Yeah.
Microsoft Flight Simulator is like phenomenally impressive for what
Yeah.
it is. The fact that they're using like real life data imaging to basically create the graphics of that game is really cool. And like it's basically exactly what you would want from a Microsoft Flight Simulator
Yeah.
kind of game. Like I flew over, like I flew out of Sky Harbor Airport and I flew around and I found not only my apartment, but then I like flew over my parents' house a few miles up the road and like I could see their cul-de-sac and I could see like their driveway and stuff and I could see my apartment complex and all that stuff and fly close enough to the ground and not crash to do all that. And it was like really cool, and knowing this city as well as I do, it was fun just like flying around from the air and still being able to like navigate because it was so well realized, such a far cry from the Microsoft Flight Simulator 95 that I remember like my dad playing when I was growing up, where it was like, okay, if your city has like a couple big buildings, those will stick up out of the ground, but everything else is just like a matte painting of like SimCity 2000 type graphics or something like that. And so yeah, it was just really, really cool. Like flying over my old high school and stuff like that was phenomenal and wonderful in Flight Simulator. Mario Kart Live is really cool in that again, it is it's that toys to life idea of here's like a remote control car and it's got a camera in it and you can set up an AR racetrack and play with your friends or kids or something like that. Tilo 2 and Ghost, I think, are, very much kind of the standout stellar technical achievement in like, hey, look at how pretty video games can be this year. But again, like much with our audio design conversation, I'm going to give this one to technical achievement for Dreams because of just the powerhouse. They created a playable game engine that is accessible. And it just needs to like have an audience to create things out of it. And if you sat down and watched the Blessing Show season finale,
That's what I was going to reference.
a couple weeks ago or a week ago, as of kind of this episode going live, like there is an audience out there that is making really cool things, let alone like making the Blessing Show in Dreams and doing really cool stuff with that. So yeah, I think, and again, like this being the kind of award or the kind of game the DICE Awards really, I think, latches onto. I think they'll give this to Dreams.
I absolutely think Dreams will win it. I think Dreams should win it. I think Dreams is such, again, I can't stress it enough, such a unique, weird, like so far outside the box video game experience. Like I think one of its closest parallels is something like No Man's Sky, where it is just such a weird and like wildly ambitious thing that like people don't even understand for a while. I think Dreams is, I think it is just one of the most like innovative and creative things that games have seen in so long, and I think it absolutely will win here. I think it is such an obvious category for it to do that. To say nothing of any of the other excellent nominees, but I think Dreams absolutely will take this prize.
Yeah. Up next, we have Action Game of the Year. The nominees here are Doom Eternal, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, and Neo 2, which admittedly I completely forgot came out last year.
Came out last year?
It's not my kind of game, but it's also, I think it came out like right around the beginning of the pandemic times or something like that. So it's like it got, very much overlooked, I think, by like Animal Crossing or something like that. The one I really, actually no, I guess I got to throw it to you. What do you think is going to take it here, Logan? Then I'll come in with my thoughts and commentary.
So this is a really interesting category, I think, in genre.
Mm-hmm.
Neo 2 won't win, so I think we can push that one off. But in terms of the other four, I think, at least for me, my own personal experience with the game, and then I think kind of the critical reception around it, I think Doom Eternal didn't have as big a pop and big an effect on people as Doom 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that will win as much as I think that game is still fun. And so then I think it's really a matter of Hades, Half-Life, or Miles Morales. And these are such three different games, all fit in within the same category I find really interesting. For me, I've kind of learned to not bet against Hades unless you feel really strongly about another one of the nominees. I don't. I think Hades probably will win it. In terms of if it should or not, I mean, Hades is such a clever, I think, brilliantly realized game of what it is trying to do. I think Half-Life is easily one of the best VR games ever made. Just like full stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Miles Morales it's Spider-Man, right? It is Spider-Man, but with a better story, a more compelling lead character, and I think more heart put into it. But ultimately, I think Hades will win this category.
Yeah, I think Doom Eternal suffers from the fact that like it's still really great, like Doom 2016 was, but it didn't have like the splash and like new reboot feeling of Doom 2016, and it seemed like the things they added, i.e. the platforming elements of Doom Eternal, ended up turning a lot of people off. I really enjoyed them. I thought they added a new dynamic to like how I needed to engage in each of the combat arenas and stuff like that. My bigger problem with Doom Eternal was the game was way too long and difficulty curve like ramped up like crazy at the end kind of thing. And so I very much felt like I was getting just punched in the face over and over and over again for like the last 10 hours of that game, of like, a 20 to 30 hour game, it felt like. Hades, I think, is phenomenal, and is probably what I would want to see win here. But I think I'm gonna make the prediction of Half-Life Alyx.
Interesting.
Because again, like that, I'm curious, I guess, like who the voters of this will be. Like, did the voters get to play Half-Life Alyx? Because that seems to always be like the thing that really seals the deal. Is like, not enough people played Half-Life Alyx to give it the votes it needs to win one of these awards.
GameSpot's Game of the Year, right?
I think so. I think they gave it to him.
I thought that's. I was trying to think. Yeah.
Yeah. Like and Spider-Man, like I loved, and it was a great thing, and I'm glad to see per like the latest NPDs, it's doing really well, and it had the inverse of the Doom Eternal thing, where like it was such a more compact, like not bite size, but it wasn't Spider-Man 2018, and especially when I went from Spider-Man Miles Morales into Spider-Man 2018, I was like, oh, that's right. There was just so much more game in Spider-Man 2018. But being able to like enjoy all of Spider-Man Miles Morales in a weekend didn't at all take away from it. In fact, it didn't have the bloat that I think you could see in 2018's like side missions and stuff like that. So it was a great game too. I just think it probably it would be like number 3 of Half-Life, Hades, and then Spider-Man for me. I think my prediction here: Half-Life Alyx, and I still like am eager to sit down and try and play it myself. I got myself an Oculus Quest. I just need to figure out if I can make that work for a Half-Life Alyx. Figure out how to jury rig Steam VR through an Oculus. But yeah. Throw it back over to you.
Yeah, so we are looking at Adventure Game of the Year this time around. And we've got Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Ghost of Tsushima, Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition, The Last of Us Part 2, and Ori and the Will of the Wisp. Again, an interesting mix of games that maybe aren't all in the same genre, but nonetheless, this is where we're at. Trevor, who do you think is going to win Adventure Game of the Year?
Yeah, it's like Tilo 2 being here instead of action game, I think is really what I'm like, oh, that's where the weird thing is for me. Cuz I think action, and I think it's the breakdown between those two categories is bizarre, I guess. Cuz
Assassin's Creed Valhalla too,
I could
right?
see
Is
like
another one where it's
adventure game,
yeah.
hack and slash, but then I'm like, well, Hades is in action, so nope, that doesn't make sense. And also not knowing the gameplay of Kentucky Route Zero, I was like, oh, I thought that was more like a narrative, like I guess it's that kind of adventure
That's
game,
my
maybe.
assumption.
The vast experience of adventure games here. Of these, it comes down to Tilo 2 or Ghost of Tsushima, probably.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think this is probably one where Tilo 2 takes it, in terms of kind of like Ghost of Tsushima will probably be has the potential to be another like Spider-Man, losing out to the God of War and Red Dead Redemption debate of 2018. And so I think Tilo 2 probably wins here. And I mean, I'd give it. I would want Ghost to win, honestly. So, Ghost gets my what I want, but I think Tilo 2 takes the award on this one.
Yeah, I think The Last of Us Part 2 will win for sure. I think that's a really easy discussion for me. I think that game will win. In a similar way to you, I think this is kind of a two-horse race between Ghost and The Last of Us Part 2. Have not obviously gotten to Last of Us Part 2 yet because my emotions can't handle it. I think that, Ghost, I think, is just an extraordinary video game. It was my game of the year for last year, obviously. I think it is one of my favorite games of the past generation. So I'll say that's what I want to win, but I think unquestionably Last of Us Part 2 will win this award,
Yeah. I will throw out there, I would not be upset if Ori pulls an upset and surprises it, because Ori is and was a phenomenal Metroidvania type game last year. I think it suffered a lot of the same kinds of issues.
Yeah, that's why I think it won.
Doom Eternal, in that it was another game, bigger iteration of the first game, and more to it. But I would say it handled the newness and the let's make it a little bit bigger better than Doom Eternal did. Especially because it got rid of some of the brutally unforgiving elements of the first game. I'm looking at you, Genso Tree or whatever it was, that where you just replay that sequence over and over again because you keep drowning. But yeah, I think it still goes to Tilo 2. So moving on, we have Family Game. I think this is a stacked. This is a fun one, yeah.
Category.
Family Game of the Year. We have Animal Crossing: New Horizons. We have Astro's Playroom. We have Dreams, Fall Guys: Ultimate Knockout, and Sackboy: A Big Adventure. What do you think, Logan? What do you think's gonna take it there? I think I know what your personal pick would be, but yeah, what do you think's gonna take this one?
So it's really interesting. My favorite game that I've played in 2021 is Astro's Playroom. It would be my game of the year. And if I had played it last year still too, it would have been easily my runner-up.
Yeah, in the conversation behind Ghost there.
It only been behind Ghost. It would have been ahead of Tony Hawk and Warzone even. I genuinely love that video game. I think it oozes charm and joy and happiness, and it is such a great celebration of PlayStation and all these characters and games and stories we've grown up with over 25 years. And even if you don't have that background knowledge, I think it gives enough of it to you. and again is just such a happy game, almost in a very Mario 64 way, where it just exudes charm. Having said that, I'm afraid that any category in which Animal Crossing New Horizons is in, it's just so likely to win, because it was, I mean, I would argue that alongside The Last Part 2 were like the two video games of 2020, and I just think that Animal Crossing will win, which is not to say anything bad about Animal Crossing. I probably think Astral Playroom is more of my kind of style game, to be fair. But I think Animal Crossing will win. I personally would have Astral Playroom be first, Fall Guys be second, and then probably Animal Crossing follow up there, although I haven't played Sackboy, and I'm a huge Sackboy fan as well, so maybe that's not even the case. But I think Animal Crossing will win the award, unfortunately.
I mean, so yeah, it's very interesting. Because yeah, there's another one. I played all these games, and while I very much think you're probably right, and Animal Crossing has a great shot to win it, I would say it's actually the worst of all these games.
That's I didn't want to be the one to say. I was like, I feel like this just
like
yeah.
it is absolutely like a comfort food kind of game, and it came out at absolutely the right time for the people.
Perfect time, yeah.
And really, like it like if you're looking at like Animal Crossing versus like Astro's Playroom, that really comes down to, do you like Nintendo or do you like PlayStation?
Yeah.
Dreams, I don't think Dreams has a shot in this category, just because I don't think
that's
like,
a weird. Yeah,
I don't think of Dreams as like family game, especially like the story mode like pack in that they put in for Dreams is not like a family story. It's you know, like telling a more mature adult story about like, you know, dealing with, you know, loss and depression and kind of stuff like that, and kind of working through that. I think Artstream, I think, is what it was called. Fall Guys is an interesting kind of like in the family game of the year category, just because I imagine like it probably led to lots of screaming matches and stuff like that. and honestly, like Sackboy, like I only played it single player, but like it would be an incredibly fun co-op experience, and especially because there are like co-op only levels that I didn't even get to really see. But yeah, my personal pick here would be Astro's Playroom as well. And it really comes down to like, do I think? Yeah, I think this is, because unlike you, I don't think Animal Crossing is a shoo-in in any category, especially I think we'll see it later in like online. And as an online game, it is atrocious. It is terrible. It has Nintendo's classically bad like online infrastructure issues. So I don't think it will win there at all. But I think for family game, it's probably the easy front runner this year. So I'll put my prediction behind that as well, you know, for the sake of the Domino's pizza bet. But my personal pick here would be Astro's Playroom as well.
Astro's Playroom, yeah. It's a phenomenal video game.
Yeah. Hit us with fighting game, Logan.
Yes, so moving on. Only 4 nominees
like
here.
The next couple nominees we're not going to have too much to say on, I don't think, but yeah.
We've got Fighting Game of the Year. We have EA Sports UFC 4, Grain Blue Fantasy Versus, Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, and Them's Fighting Herds are the 4 nominees. Trevor, who do you think is gonna win?
I mean, just for sake of popularity alone, like I feel like Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate shouldn't be eligible because it's just an ultimate version of a game that came out a couple years ago at this point. But I think it's going to be Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, and given that that's the only game I played, let alone like remotely would know anything about, I think that would be my pick too.
Yeah, I mean Mortal Kombat, I think. Well, I would be surprised if it doesn't win. But I do want to give a shout out to Them's Fighting Herds, which is a great name for a video game.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yes, but I will agree with Mortal Kombat 11.
Yeah. Plus, they can maybe have like a secret tie-in with the, because I mean, at this point, I believe the Dice Awards have all been like pre-recorded. I think they're just going to have like a VOD going the day of or something like that. I think.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
I think that's because I feel like I've already heard people talking about how they've already recorded like their segments and stuff like that. But if I'm mistaken, anyway, regardless, I think they could also have a nice little tie-in with the Mortal Kombat movie coming out the next day, I think. So, or even maybe that day. So, yeah, be a nice little like, you know, cross-branding promotion thing or whatever. But But up next, we have Racing Game of the Year. We have Dirt
Even
5.
fewer nominees.
Exactly. Dirt 5 from Codemasters, F1 2020 from Codemasters, or Nintendo's going to come in with the upset in Mario Kart Live. What do you think is going to take this one?
I will say F1 2020.
Formula 1 2020, F1 2020. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have no stake in this. But I think Mario Kart's novelty.
Okay.
Plus, it'll have that like Mario, like that Nintendo splitting the vote kind of like,
Sure.
the two Codemasters games will like split the vote, and then Mario or Nintendo just kind of come in with like the diehard Nintendo fans will be like, no, well, we know exactly which one to pick for our horse in this race. So yeah, I think so. You're going with F1 2020, and I'm going with Mario Kart on this one. Okay.
Moving on to 5 nominees again in role-playing game of the year. This is a very interesting one, I think. We have Cyberpunk 2077. No. Final Fantasy VII
I'm
Remake.
honestly amazed it got the nomination.
Yeah. Persona 5 Royale, Wasteland 3, and Yakuza Like a Dragon. Trevor, who do you think is going to be the winner for RPG of the year?
I mean, I feel like it's down. It's between 3. It's a crapshoot, really,
Yep,
between
I agree.
Final Fantasy VII, Persona 5 Royal, and Yakuza Like a Dragon.
I really think it's only a 50-50 between 2 of those 3 games, but yeah.
You don't think Yakuza is gonna come in?
Nope, that's not the one I'm dropping.
Okay. Well, we will hear about that. So yeah, I think like just like with Mortal Kombat, I feel like Persona 5 is a cheat. It is, inarguably the definitive version of that game to play, and absolutely like even though I wish I didn't have to like replay the whole thing just for like the last 20 hours of new stuff, it was still like a worthwhile experience for me. So I really enjoyed Persona 5 Royal. I mean, my game of the year was Final Fantasy VII Remake last year, so that is the easy pick for like who I want it to be. Admittedly, I hadn't played Yakuza Like a Dragon until this year, but I've played through that one now and really enjoy it, and it's like easily on the on the short list for my games of the year this year now. I don't. It like. I think I'll make the prediction of Final Fantasy VII Remake as well. So it'll take both what I want to win as well as what I think will win. But
So
I
this is gonna
can
be a big
easily see
pivot
either
one
of those
then.
other 2 I named kind of taking it.
So I do not think that Persona 5 Royale will win this award at all. I think I would be stunned if it wins this award. Both because it is definitely a cheat. We can all be okay with it, but it's definitely a cheat, like Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate is. But no, I think it's going to be Final Fantasy VII, or I think it's going to be Yakuza Like a Dragon, and I honestly think Yakuza Like a Dragon is going to win. I think that game and that series is such a cool twist on what it's been for, 7 prior games, kind of Yakuza 0 before that.
Yep.
And this series has built up so much goodwill in recent years, and then you get this game out, and I feel like that's a game that came out at a good time too. There's been so much positive buzz around it that I really do think that Yakuza Like a Dragon can pull this off and win the award. And I think it's a game that has so much charm to it, so much heart to it. It's super goofy, and I just think there's so much goodwill around that game that I think that game will win for RPG of the year, which is maybe one of my bolder predictions, but I think it'll top Final Fantasy VII.
I mean, it's absolutely a solid pick. Yeah, the fact that it is such a diversion from everything else that studio has done is really impressive. And like, admittedly, I'm brand new to Yakuza this year, but I played Kiwami 1 and 2, and then I played Yakuza 0, and then I basically jumped ahead and went straight into Like a Dragon. And like, I loved how Yakuza like kind of reshaped its mold into a JRPG and how well that worked, because it was almost like seamless in its approach, and still has all of the goofy things that Yakuza has, but also still tells a really fun story, has great characters and all that stuff, but also just was a really great JRPG, more like, way more turn-based than Final Fantasy VII, even, because Final Fantasy VII obviously is kind of taken the more hybrid, like turn-based but action RPG route. So yeah, I could easily see that taking it as well, and wouldn't be mad about that. Still my pick would be Final Fantasy VII, just because I think that game could have so more easily failed, and it would have been a huge story if that game failed. If Yakuza went RPG and then just didn't work, they'd be like, well, it's not what that thing's known for. So they'll be back when they just decide to be an action beat 'em up again. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII, the fact that it didn't fail in all the ways it could have was just one of the great stories of last year, I think.
Yeah,
cool. I'll be very interested to see which one takes it there, and then watch us both be upset. And Persona 5 does come in, and
there's no way. I just think there's no way. Yeah.
Sports game of the year.
This is a really interesting one.
Actually, before we even move on, I'm trying to think when Persona 5 came out, how did it fare in that category at DICE? I think it probably.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe during one of our trade-offs, I'll try and look it up. Sports game, we have sports game of the year. We have EA Sports FIFA 21, MLB The Show 20, NBA 2K21, PGA Tour 2K21, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. What do you got here, Logan?
So I think this is actually a really interesting category. I think this is one of those years where sports game of the year is really fun to kind of watch, because you have kind of the a lot of the powerhouse names in terms of FIFA, MLB, and NBA. PGA Tour 2K21 being on the list is super rad and cool. Such a sleeper, I feel sports series. And then you obviously have the one who is such a different departure in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. Obviously my pick for game of the year, and I've played most of these games. Obviously my pick is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. I think that game is fantastic. I think it is such a cool reimagining of those first two games, and it has such charm and joy and heart to it. As someone who's put a incredible amount of hours into FIFA, I think that game is also really fun and neat, but I think it is the 21st iteration of that this century, and it's not the most groundbreaking, and it is a new coat of paint for the most part on the old game. I think MLB The Show is routinely one of the most underappreciated video game sporting series. I think it's just top to bottom built fantastically. And NBA 2K is always great, but I think Tony Hawk Pro Skater both is 2020's best sports game in terms of what I think, and also I think it is one that will win this award as well. I think it is just a different video game, and I think this audience in particular, I feel will vibe with that game as well. So I'm going to pick Tony Hawk Pro Skater for my pick, and also what will win.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Real quick to update, so at the 21st annual DICE Awards, Persona 5 lost RPG of the Year to Nier Automata. So yeah, even then it didn't get the love. So maybe they'll try and remedy that this year, and they'll give it to
I feel people don't remember.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, sports games always seem to be you have the always nominated are your FIFAs and your NBA 2Ks. Occasionally maybe a Madden will sneak in there, or MLB The Show. Especially in something like this, it'll be MLB The Show. But the one that always ends up coming in and stealing it from those recurring stalwarts is the Mario Kart, or the offshoot of something that is doing something wildly different. Your Crash Team Racing or something like that. And so yeah, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, it being a recreation, a beautifully recreated version of those original two games, I think is that this year. It's the this is outside of the normal sports games genre. And as a result, it gets way more eyes on it and gets way more people talking about it and the buzz behind it. So I think, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 is my pick as well.
Yeah, agreed. I can't remember. Is it my turn to read the next category? I'll just do it.
Yep.
So next up, we have Strategy and Simulation Game of the Year. This will be an interesting one. We've got Crusader Kings 3, Desperados 3, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Monster Train, and Per Aspera. Trevor, who's going to take home the award?
I think this will be Microsoft Flight Simulator. I think that's it's obviously the simulation side of the strategy / simulation, but I think it does it so pristinely well, as I gushed about earlier, that I think even among all those other games, which admittedly like none of them really even ring a bell to me, apart from like occasionally hearing them in some of these other conversations. I think this is just Microsoft's award to take.
Yeah, so I think Microsoft Flight Simulator will win as well. But I do want to give a shout out to Crusader King 3, which is such a Logan-ass video game that is just so complicated up front that I can never walk in the door to any of these games. I would love to play Crusader King games. They're like such my speed. I love like the dynastic thing of like you get to build a dynasty and have family members and all that kind of stuff. It's all great. It is like such a high barrier to entry for me, right? Like I'm just never going to like again, one of my friends at like an old job back in the day tried to get me into Crusaders King 2, and he would like share me like YouTube videos like to watch, and they're like an hour and a half long, and like how to get into it. And I was like, I'm never gonna do this. Like fuck this. Like if the game is so complicated that I can't get through the tutorial, that tutorial has failed at what it's trying to do. It's not teaching me anything. I have to watch something else to learn how to do the thing that's teaching me the thing. But I do want to give a shout out to it because I love the idea of those games so much. But yeah, it is going to be Microsoft Flight Simulator that wins.
Moving on, we have Immersive Reality Technical Achievement. The nominees here are Half-Life Alyx, Mario Kart Live, Museum of Other Realities, Paper Beast, and Tempest. What do you think is going to take this one, Logan?
I think this is one of the easiest awards that we're going to cover the entire night. This and the one that's going to follow up with it. It is going to be Half-Life Alyx. I mean, it just is. I think it's pretty much a lock and a slam dunk. I'll even say it's what I think will win, should win as well, but it is what is going to win this award.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the potential upset, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, because up next we have like Immersive Reality Game of the Year, and it's like, what's the difference between technical achievement and the Game of the Year? And the only reason I could like see splitting up those two categories would be if like you wanted to honor something like Mario Kart Live in the cool thing it's doing with tech and taking like a real life physical thing and gamifying it. But I think also it would be like Mario Kart Live would be like the upset win to Half-Life Alyx.
Yeah.
So Half-Life Alyx gets my vote here as well.
Moving on to Immersive Reality Game of the Year, we've got Down the Rabbit Hole, Half-Life Alyx, Paper Beast, The Room VR, A Dark Matter, and The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. And before I get to what anybody wants to predict, I should make it clear I didn't hear anything about The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, and the few things I have heard didn't make it seem like it was that great of a game. But you have to have 5 games on your VR Game of the Year list.
I saw like they did some activations, and I saw like Greg and Trisha Hershberger playing it. Greg from Kind of Funny, like around the time it came out, and it was fine. It was basically like a zombies horde mode kind of thing, in VR, and so like your traction there will vary on how much you like zombies and horde modes and how well the VR works for when you're being attacked by zombies in a horde mode kind of setting.
I assume it's not your pick though for the award.
No. I would also, this is another, again, easy Half-Life Alyx takes it and would of what I know of these games, it would be my pick as well.
Yeah, I agree to that as well. I think Half-Life Alyx will win this award.
Yep. Moving on, we have Outstanding Achievement for an Independent Game. We have Coffee Talk. We have Hades. We have If Found. Shout out to George Cruz Alvarez, who really loved that one. We have Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition and I think it's Noita.
That's how I would pronounce it.
Yeah,
Noita.
we'll say Noita. What do you think is going to do it for indie game this year?
So I think Hades is going to win. I will say that right out of the gate. I think that game is going to win this game. I think, indie game of the year is routinely one of my favorite kind of categories. I think Coffee Talk is really rad, actually. I've played that at a few different PAXs, and I think that game is super cool, and I love the idea behind it, and I think that game is really, really unique. As Trevor already said, shout out to George Cruz and, everyone at Pop Agenda for If Found.
I don't think they did anything for I don't think Pop Agenda did anything for If Found. It was an Annapurna game, so.
But either way, shout out to If Found.
Yeah, George just really liked it, like when he was doing IP stuff.
Well, shout out to it either way. Kentucky Red Zero, like we've talked about before, me and Trevor have been super into, and I think are really eager to check out ourselves. Noita is one I know kind of nothing on, but just on that one visual, it looks really cool. But I think Hades will win this category. I just think that it is kind of the juggernaut out of the 5 here. I think it's a legitimate Game of the Year contender, as we will get to in a few minutes here. So I think it'll win this category.
Yeah, I mean, agreed on all fronts. I heard interesting things about Coffee Talk, and then I heard that it didn't really live up to maybe the coffee version premise of like, hey, it's like Valhalla, but you're talking about coffee instead of at a bar or something like that. But maybe that was just because people were trying to compare things that shouldn't be compared. But yeah, Hades is just phenomenal in everything it's doing. I am surprised that like Spiritfarer didn't get a mention here, even though it was mentioned elsewhere. Because I thought it was, again, one of the standouts and one of my favorite games of last year, certainly. So yeah, that was a weird like omission, I guess. But of these, Hades is the easy pick for me.
Yeah. Moving on into mobile game of the year, God help us. We have Halo Vista, Legends of Runeterra, Little Orpheus.
I would say Runeterra.
Runeterra, Legend of Runeterra, Little Orpheus, Song of Bloom, and South of the Circle. Trevor?
I have no idea about any of these games. I mean, like, from name recognition alone, though, I guess I would say, like, Legends of Runeterra is probably, like, the front runner, given it's a Riot Games kind of thing. But also, the Chinese Room and Little Orpheus and Sumo Digital probably has, like, more of the, like, DICE Awards kind of vibe behind it. So I think I'll go with Little Orpheus for my picks.
I'm going to go for, because I just want to, I think South of the Circle looks really cool. I think Song of the Bloom looks really neat as well, but I'm just going to pick South of the Circle. I don't necessarily think it will win. I think Little Orpheus probably will win the award. But South of the Circle looks really neat. I love its visual aesthetic a lot.
So are you locking in South of the Circle for your prediction?
Or let's do it. Fuck it. Why not? You know what I mean?
Okay.
Let's make it interesting.
Cool. Moving on, we have Online Game. Online Game of the Year. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we have Animal Crossing New Horizons. We have Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. We have Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout, Ghost of Tsushima, and Tetris Effect Connected. Another interesting category here, Logan. What do you think is going to take it?
So I think personally that it's a battle between Call of Duty and Fall Guys. Is my kind of thing. And then it gets really hard for me, right? I think Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War is it's just a giant undertaking. And its Warzone mode in particular is, I think, really, really good.
Is Warzone part of Black Ops Cold War, though?
So they have,
I feel like Warzone is its standalone thing.
They have like Warzone specific things, and it gets like really messy and complicated how you want to like do the layers and stuff. But so I mean, it's Call of Duty, right? But I feel like it's DICE and it's weird, and they're gonna do weird shit, and also like it had such a big moment last summer that like I'm gonna say that Fall Guys is going to win, and maybe even should win as well.
I think, yeah, as I said, like
I think it's a category where the big game won't necessarily win it.
Right. I think Animal Crossing is terrible as an online game. Is just atrocious, despite, the fact that it should be better.
Yeah.
Like playing that online with friends actively makes that game worse at times because you've got people coming and going on your island and just like everything stops while somebody flies onto the island now for 5 minutes or whatever it takes. It's just like this is crap. Obviously, I can't speak to Call of Duty, but knowing the buzz behind Cold War being a little lackluster, but people really turning it around with zombies. People really love that, and then as you mentioned, kind of Warzone. Ultimately, I think my pick is going to go Fall Guys as well. But Tetris Effect Connected, like making that into a multiplayer experience, was a cool idea. I just don't think it probably had enough like eyes on it.
A bop, yeah.
And then the fact that like Ghost of Tsushima ended up having like a really solid like online multiplayer experience.
Yeah.
The fact that Ghost of Tsushima is nominated here and like Avengers is not is like a smack in the face to the team over at Square Enix, really.
Yeah.
And Crystal Dynamics. Because that obviously should have been in the conversation. But yeah, so shout out to like Ghost's online, multiplayer experience.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I give it to Fall Guys, even though I hate what that game has become and what that game did to me for a brief window of time. But when it was good, it was good. And it definitely had its moment. It's one of those like clearly, it would seem that DICE plays by the rules of like, hey, the game had to come out this year because we don't see something like Among Us in this conversation, which we've seen in a lot of those other kind of like best online game of the year categories. Hit me with the nominees for game design.
We've got for outstanding achievement in game design, we have Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, The Last of Us Part 2, Marvel Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Trevor Sarkey. Who is winning for outstanding achievement in game design?
Yeah, it certainly
we're into the big three here, right?
Murderer's row of nominees here, and I mean honestly, of these, I gotta throw my weight behind Hades again. I think Hades was such a phenomenal game design element in particular. Obviously we have game direction coming up and then game of the year still to come. And so I think in the game design conversation, I think everything Hades is doing in making a procedurally generated roguelike game have as much like excitement and fun, and like every run has the potential to be a really great run. The fact that like I put in 130 some odd runs in that game and couldn't tell you like what my favorite weapon was of like the 6 core weapons, because they have such wonderful diversity to them that like I could have, I probably hated the gun the most, but I could get like the right build and suddenly the gun became like just a powerhouse weapon for me or something like that. And so it was like just a really cool, phenomenal thing for game design. Obviously haven't played Half-Life Alyx, so I still can't speak to like the real intricacies of that. But, and Last of Us Part 2, while great, just isn't really doing anything new in a way that I think like that really stood the test of time for me. And that was another one that, again, like the game wore out its welcome for me a little bit. Like still a phenomenal game, but it's one of those I thought could have been edited down. And Ghost is great, but just didn't do enough new and innovative and interesting things for me to eke out Hades here. So yeah, and same with Miles Morales. Like all these games, great games, but Hades takes the award here for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hades is going to win. I think this, out of like the last 3 categories we're kind of doing, which are some of the 3 biggest, I think this is the easiest for me to predict. I think Hades will win. I think Ghost does like a lot of really cool, interesting things, and like really small ways to change up what that kind of style of game is. I just think that because it's doing it in more subtle ways, not as like crazy ways as what Hades does, or I think what a roguelite is, I think it doesn't get as much buzz, but I think Hades will win this game. I would say my personal pick would be Ghost probably, but I would be very surprised if Hades does not win for this award.
I think I mean
In particular,
on Ghost real quick, I will give it some love in that. Like I remember when we finally sat down and did our spoiler cast, like you, me, and Cam all had very different ways of approaching like combat in that game. I want to say like one of us like was really into doing the standoffs, and then one of us was really into like going in and stealthing, and then I went in. I got to the point where I really
Cam
loved
was standoff, I was stealth. Yeah,
there you go. And I really loved just engaging full out into the combat and dancing between the different stances. And like really doing all those shifts and stuff like that. And so like that is absolutely like an element of game design and brilliant game design at it that it gives you all of those, it gives you that variety and those options, and all three of them can be incredibly compelling choices.
And each work, unlike some Assassin's Creed games, maybe.
Yeah. So I have your prediction as Hades, and then you would want Ghost to win, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Cool. So moving on to the penultimate award, Outstanding Achievement in Game Direction. We have Ghost of Tsushima from Sucker Punch, Hades from Supergiant Games, Half-Life Alyx from Valve, Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition from Annapurna Interactive and Cardboard Computer, and The Last of Us Part 2 from Naughty Dog. Hit me with your thoughts, Logan.
What a list. God, what a collection of games. Yeah, I mean, wow. I'm going to say I think The Last of Us Part 2 will win. I think that, I mean, it's The Last of Us Part 2, right? It's a Naughty Dog game. I'm really curious. I really want to have a conversation with The Last of Us Part 2, obviously. Like a more in-depth one in the future.
I'd love to have that too if you'd ever sit down and play it.
It seems like it is like a weird thing of like, in some ways, the most divisive Naughty Dog game since, in a mild way, maybe Uncharted 3 and kind of the weird reaction that game has, even though that game is clearly the best of the original trilogy. Mm-hmm. Or more broadly, maybe since like, I mean, in terms of Naughty Dog, maybe since Jak 2, right? Like, I feel like there are people who love that game, and who really feel like it spoke to them and identified with them and hit them in really powerful ways. And the people who didn't really sync up with, they didn't vibe with, they liked parts of it, but not all of it. Like, I feel like it got such a broad reaction of opinions and thoughts in that game, as opposed to the first one or what Uncharted did, that I'm really curious on it on that side of things. But I think unquestionably it is it is an achievement in game design and game direction, and I don't think it'll win for game design because of the fact that Hades is there, but I do think that in terms of, how that game is put together and directed and how it goes from start to finish and everything that entails, I think The Last of Us Part 2 would be what I think will win this category, and maybe even what I would pick, although again, I could argue Ghost because I think that game is just flows so well, but I think Last of Us Part 2 will win it.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably the one I would give Last of Us Part 2 the best shot at taking it from Hades, but I still think I'm going to go Hades on this. I think Hades, again, even from a direction standpoint, is doing so many, like, new things in the medium, and it from like the wider conversation that we had, there, like, obviously we talked on the show at some point about the idea and the think pieces that have been written about, like, the Game Awards giving game direction, best game direction to Last of Us is like a slap in the face to every developer that crunches or something like that, when you've got Hades out here that made a point to not crunch, not getting awarded here. So I think this might be a chance for the industry to kind of have their say on it, essentially, if like they're thinking about that as part of the conversation. And I think it would be really, interesting if we see Hades end up, like it's a David versus Goliath kind of thing, and Hades here is David versus the Tilo 2 Goliath, I would say, and Naughty Dog and Sony and all that. So yeah, I think Hades still gets my pick here, but I wouldn't be mad about Tilo 2 winning it, because it's great direction. I just have some issues with like its lack of editing. Again, I think was my biggest complaint with Tilo. And it's still an amazing game. It's just something that like keeps it from like reaching phenomenal heights for me, I guess. So yeah, Hades would be my pick. But then yeah, like I also wouldn't be upset at all to see Ghost sneak in and steal it, because that'd be really cool for that team. But yeah, Hades gets my pick and my prediction. Closes out. Logan.
We're on it for Game of the Year at the 24th Annual DICE Awards. The nominees are Animal Crossing: New Horizons from Nintendo, Final Fantasy VII Remake from Square Enix, Ghost of Tsushima from Sony Interactive Entertainment, Sucker Punch, Hades from Supergiant Games, and The Last of Us Part 2, again from Sony Interactive, Naughty Dog. Trevor, who do you think will win Game of the Year at the DICE Awards? I feel like I have a guess at who you're going to say based off some of your last few answers, but who is your prediction?
Yeah, as much as I would love to come out here and be like, haha, surprise, Final Fantasy VII Remake's going to take it, the fact that they didn't get nominated in all those other kind of like key categories leads me to think they're probably not going to, have the weight to carry over a Game of the Year award. But like, they snuck in and won the kind of funny Game of the Year award earlier in the year, so shout out to that. Like, Animal Crossing is inarguably like, if DICE goes the Untitled Goose Game route this year, that pick is Animal Crossing: New Horizons, because that was like the game everybody talked about last year. In a like. Untitled Goose Game was more like the meme game of the year, but still, like, Animal Crossing was, arguably the game that best defines 2020. But it is not a great game, and I say that having put in 500 or 600 hours of that game or whatever. Like, it has a lot of design flaws that I would be mad if it won Game of the Award from the designers themselves and the developers themselves. So ultimately, like, it comes down to Ghost again. I think is the long shot, the Spider-Man 2018 of this conversation, and it really comes down to Hades and Last of Us Part 2. And I think, like, Last of Us Part 2 had that critical groundswell of like all the critics loved it when it came out. Not all, but like, the overwhelming like, vibe was critics, were behind that game. And I think as a result that ended up having that like the rubber band effect.
Yeah,
exactly. Like people playing it and then being like, like picking apart, like, how is this like a masterpiece or a 10, like people finding every little thing they could to
not understanding that a masterpiece doesn't necessarily mean perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And Hades didn't have that backlash. Like Hades had the opposite effect, where like Hades like was critically loved, and then people hopped into it and were like, oh my god, it's better than they said, or it's better than I thought. And so like ultimately, like Hades, I think, has a more interesting and compelling story because of that. And also the fact that it was, like the biggest thing, honestly, that like helps benefit Hades for me is this weird, I've seen the entire No-Clip documentary series on the making of Hades. And so I feel that much more connected to that game, even because I've seen the team behind it making the game. Heck, I met one of them while waiting in line at PAX West 2019. Like, she was there showing off Hades in early access and stuff like that. She was in line, standing next to me, waiting to play Borderlands 3, and we started talking about how she had like just joined the Supergiant team to work on that game, and I was like, that's really cool. And then I got to see her in the documentary and be like, that's really cool. I met that person. So like there's absolutely like a weird bias towards Hades because of that for me, but I also think it's just a very phenomenal game, and I can't wait for it to come to other platforms and just replay it again. Like I absolutely am gonna sit down and like probably try and platinum it on PlayStation if they don't be dicks about it and make things super egregious, which they absolutely will. Why am I saying that? I've seen their platinum lists for their other games.
They're hard.
There's no chance in hell I'm gonna get the platinum because it's gonna be like, do it with all of the beat the game with all of the the modifiers set to max to just be a big old pain in the butt. And I'm like, God damn it. But I love my time with it regardless, and it had a great time with that game. So yeah, Hades would be my pick here, and who I think will take the award from the Game Awards here. But it is like 6 1/2 dozen the other. I could easily see them going The Last of Us 2 as well.
So it's really interesting. I think that Hades, in not insignificant ways, has more in common with The Last of Us than The Last of Us Part 2 does. I think that by the time of The Last of Us Part 2, Naughty Dog has this feel of like being almost too big, right? Like it's almost like become a little cool to like not like Naughty Dog, right? To take pot shots at it, right? To not like The Last of Us Part 2 for whatever reasons. It's too big, it's too bloated, it's too etc. kind of thing. And Hades is this like breakout moment from a studio that's put out a lot of great games that like never maybe got like its moment like it's having right now with Hades. Like it is like the best thing they've done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very similar to The Last of Us, right? Like we're in this weird moment in time where it's because the game came out 8 years ago now, but it's so easy to forget that like when The Last of Us came out,
we're gonna get a remake before too long. So
yeah, but like when The Last of Us came out, like people almost, I feel like, didn't even know what to expect of it, right? Like this is the studio that had made Crash, Jak and Daxter, and Uncharted, and they were gonna do like this zombie game, and like you didn't really know what it was gonna be. I feel like, right? And like the buzz around it wasn't that like crazy in the build up to like it up until reviews dropped, right? It was like, all right, yeah, like this is like the B game from like the Naughty Dog studio. It kind of felt like, and then it's like, oh, it's a whole other thing, kind of. And I think that was Naughty Dog's big moment on the stage, right? Like that was when they burst out and were like, we are a serious game studio kind of thing. A little bit like Hades is having. And I think a little bit like The Last of Us, Hades 10 years from now will be a game that people remember and talk about and is still like being discussed and analyzed and critiqued and reviewed. I think that Hades probably will win this award. Whether or not it should, I don't know. I think that a little bit like the first Last of Us, where reviews dropped and people were like, what the hell? Like, what is this game? And then they played it and were like, oh my God, like, I have never played anything like this before, right? Like, obviously, The Last of Us is my favorite game of all time. I'm biased, but I see more similarities in Hades' story and Hades' arc than I do in The Last of Us Part 2's arc. And that's partially just where these two studios are at in their respective journeys. But I think Hades is just such a game that I think it's kind of become the award season dark horse, right? Like a little bit like the Oscars, where like you have like the front runners, and then over time is like award show after award show after award show, and the build up to Oscars happens. Start to be like, maybe it's not gonna be this movie actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's sort of where we're at now with Hades, right? Like I think IGN giving it its game of the year was a like shot into the night of like, hey, like this is maybe the game we're gonna kind of start to rally around as like an industry. I think it's gonna win Game of the Year probably. I think especially if it wins both of the other two awards before Game of the Year, then I think there's virtually no way it loses Game of the Year.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it will win both. I think it'll win one and The Last just win the other ones, and it'll be like a neck and neck thing. I think the final award count, which they don't show obviously, but like I think will be, somewhat close here. but I do think Hades will win for Game of the Year, and it will be a really cool story to kind of wrap up that game's arc and that studio's arc. A little bit like, again, taking it back 8 years ago to when The Last of Us came out and Naughty Dog just swept up and won like 200 Game of the Year awards, right? I think we're kind of at this moment again with Hades, and that's what I think will win. In terms of what I think should win, 6-10's a half dozen, right? Like it's you pick any of these games they could win. I'll pick Ghost just because I think Ghost of Tsushima is a fantastic video game.
Yeah.
That like is in this weird situation where like I can't say enough people are talking about Ghost of Tsushima because like it won our site's Game of the Year, it won my Game of the Year. We at That Nerdy Site talk about it all of the time. But I feel like in the industry, it kind of got sandwiched between Hades and Last of Us and Animal Crossing, like all of the bigger games. And so like in some weird way, like it does feel like it kind of got slept on. But like Ghost is a fantastic video game.
I mean, it's interesting because even that, like, I think Ghost being like coming right after Last of Us, like it did last year, it came out like with such low expectations.
Yeah,
that it just exploded past them. And so I thought like it actually got like way more buzz and conversation than even Last of Us did probably by the end. Because yeah, it was that like, again, the rubber band thing of like everybody kind of started picking apart Last of Us's, problems and issues and stuff like that. And it's all about a case of expectations. Worth pointing out, I would say, kind of in your like how the ultimate awards one breakdown will happen. Last of Us does lead the nominations here with 11 nominations.
With 11, right? Yeah.
Part of that is always like I always throw out there is like, well, because it's got like 2 in the same category for for actor or whatever for performance. In the same way that like the reason probably no musical will ever beat Hamilton is because like everybody in the freaking cast of Hamilton was nominated for the awards, even though they would only ever be able to win a certain number of them.
Cleaned up those awards too. I think they won certainly 3 of the 4 acting categories.
Yeah, I think the supporting actress, I don't think they did. I believe.
Yeah.
Or no, I think it was
lead actress. I don't think.
Yeah, Eliza did not win. I believe.
Yeah.
Philippa Soo did not win. I think that year was. Color Purple, I think, is who ended up winning that one. Anyway,
maybe.
Well, welcome to our musical cast diversion. So following Last of Us leading with 11 nominations, you had Ghost with 10, and then Hades with only 8. So yeah, like Ghost. I mean, Ghost definitely like showed up to play at the DICE Awards, and if the whole like it's an honor just to be nominated, they, which
I think is part of the thing.
They did just fine. Yeah. But yeah, I think in kind of the big pick, like, and I would even agree that like those 3 games are probably like the big conversation games for Game of the Year. Yeah. That I think is worth having for last year, even despite my personal pick of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Like Final Fantasy VII Remake always has the benefit of, hey, we knew what Final Fantasy VII was, so like it has a huge leg up on things, and the closest these 2 have of that is, well, we knew the story behind The Last of Us, and where's The Last of Us 2 going to go? So, yeah, I mean, I'm very excited to see who actually ends up taking it. Obviously, the awards are Thursday night, so the day after this episode goes live, so we will know who owes who dominoes. Not too long after this episode airs.
Yep. But otherwise, those are the predictions, and that is the show. Thank you for listening. If you like what you heard, you can go support us over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Like all of our wonderful patrons and supporters have. Their support means the world to us, and keeps lights on, keeps the mics going, and make shows like this and like that D+ show happen. So again, you can go over to patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Like all of our wonderful patrons, we are very, very thankful for your support. You can also go support us by liking, subscribing, sharing the podcast with your friends on podcast services all around the globe. By also going over to youtube.com/thatnerdysite and hitting the subscribe button, hitting the bell button, giving a like, leaving a comment, like a very nice one we got earlier today from a podcast from a year ago. And just generally helping out over there as we keep growing the YouTube and video sides of things. You can also go rate and review us on iTunes, leave the stars, leave some kind words. It helps us in the algorithm's black magic. Otherwise, you can go find Trevor at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trevor, anything that you want to shout out or plug?
Just keep an eye out on the YouTube for the Let's Plays. This week we have, yesterday as of this episode going live, we had Logan and me sitting down with some more It Takes Two. And then presumably, assuming I get the file from Cameron, part 2 of his Emily is Away 3 episode will go live Thursday, so the day after this episode airs. If not, I have another It Takes Two episode in the tank ready to go. So we got plenty of stuff on the Let's Play.
We got a lot of Let's Play content
coming up here, especially if you like It Takes Two and Emily is Away 3.
You can go find me at Lefty Logie or Lefty Logie, Loggy. I will give our YouTube content a shout out in general. I think we've been really killing the YouTube side of thing lately. I'm really proud of what we've been doing over there. Trevor has been killing it. Cam did in the Endless Way Let's Play, also doing awesome work. So I'm very proud of all the work over there. So go check out all of that. We have so much in the works and even more to come. I'm very excited about some future projects. Also go encourage you to go check out my written pieces on the Eastern Conference MLS playoff teams and the Western Conference ones. I'm probably just going to push it live by the time you hear this. Again, as my go through doing at least one written piece once a month. I didn't do one for March, so I did 2 in April. And so we have that going up. That's all fun and exciting. And then also go and listen to myself, Trevor, and Cam's spoilercast discussion of Emily's Away 3 that went live 2 days ago when you listen to this. I thought that was a really good conversation, and I really enjoyed getting to talk to the two of you about that game and why it is so special. I think for
and a
that
fun
nerdy site
follow-up for that is we will have Kyle on this show in a couple weeks' time,
yes,
right? Yeah,
absolutely. It'll be 3 episodes from now, right? I'm trying to think because it's when we're going to be recording.
Time is weird. It'll be sometime soon.
In the next few weeks, we will have a discussion with Kyle Seeley. I'm very, very excited for that. So yeah, please be excited. Otherwise, you can go find That Nerdy Site at That Nerdy Site all across the internet and the globe. For myself, for Trevor, and for all of us over here at That Nerdy Site, play your games and be good to each other. Class dismissed.